NBA trade deadline is right around the corner. Which Houston Rockets are going to make it past the trade deadline? What happens with Eric Gordon? Is Christian Wood on the trading block, and what packages are enticing for him? What is going on with John Wall? We're going to break it all down for you and more right here at Locked On Rockets.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, and also host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Look, we've got the NBA trade deadline right around the corner, and here to break down all the news, rumors, and speculation about the Houston Rockets headed into the trade deadline, I've got two very, very special guests. The first of which, the founder and sole proprietor of ClutchFans.net. What's up, Dave? How's it going, man?
Good. How you doing, Jackson?
Excited to have you here on the program, and joining us yet another David. We've got Beam Thug, amateur capologist, good friend of GMs everywhere in the Rockets Twitter sphere. How's it going, David?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Jackson.
Absolutely, guys. I'm really excited to have you all on board to kind of break down everything going on with the Houston Rockets leading into the NBA trade deadline. But first, we've got a little bit of exciting news to talk about here, and that's the fact that the Rockets are going to have some much-needed representation at All-Star Weekend 2022 here. We've got Jalen Green going to be representing the Rockets in the dunk contest, and then not only that, the Rockets will have 3 players representing them in the Rising Stars Challenge: Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Jae'Sean Tate. So first off, I think first order of business is KJ Martin and Josh Christopher were absolutely snubbed. Am I wrong here?
As far as me jumping in first, I think he was. I mean, I think he should have been on there. He's played extremely well. David and I are joke around, or at least certainly from my vantage point, he was the one pick I wasn't super thrilled with, and he's probably been the best guy, out there. I mean, you got mixed things going on with Green and Sengun, and KJ Martin. You could make a case as well, but I think their playing time's been a little bit mixed. So, you might be able to justify them not being on there, but they've played certainly well enough to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say they were probably both on the bubble. I think Christopher probably didn't get the minutes early in the season that he would have needed to accrue to kind of qualify. But as of late, I'd be hard-pressed to find 12 rookies playing better right now than Josh Christopher. And then KJ, I mean, I know Hollinger and Duncan did a redraft of the 2020 draft recently. I think Hollinger took KJ 13th overall. Wow. And I'm hard pressed to disagree. And if you're only taking 12 rookies, I'm guessing he was one of the best players that missed the cut.
Yeah, and Josh Christopher wasted no time after the announcement of the Rising Stars, participants to jump on Twitter, and he said so himself. He said, "You can't find 12 rookies with better numbers than me right now." So you got to love the confidence from Josh Christopher. And as far as the dunk contest goes with Jalen Green, the other participants of the dunk contest, it looks like it's going to be the Orlando Magic's Cole Anthony, Warriors' Juan Toscano Anderson, and Knicks' Obi Toppin. And realistically, guys, I think that this is going to be a 2-man competition between Jalen Green and Obi Toppin for whoever's going to walk away as the dunk contest champion this year. And I got to admit, I really like Jalen Green's chances here.
So do I. And I think it's a great opportunity for him, I think, to maybe change the narrative, win some fans right now. I think it's kind of trendy right now to bash Jalen Green. And I think getting him into the dunk contest is a great opportunity for him to show at least his athleticism and his skills on, as far as his speed and jumping ability. So I'm excited. I think it's a good opportunity, in my opinion, for him to sort of change the story here.
Yeah, I think from a national media standpoint, people don't really care about the Rockets this year, and it's hard to blame them. But
hey, Chris Mannix cares about the Rockets a great deal. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there. He has watched at least 6 or 8 games. Like, that's a lot of games for Chris Mannix on his plate. He's a very busy guy.
And when Jalen winning the dunk contest would kind of put him into the NBA zeitgeist, so to speak, where he, some people get a lot of attention based on particular accomplishments, whether it's fully deserved or not. And winning the dunk contest, I think, is going to really put him on the map. So I'm certainly rooting for him. I'm very happy that he's participating.
I'll agree there. I think that it's going to be a lot of fun, and there's a reason to watch the dunk contest again, right? Shout out to the last dunk contest participant for the Houston Rockets, Air Bud, Chase Budinger. Hey Bud, let's party, man. God, I can't think about Budinger without dropping that line.
Terrifically terrible Matt Bullard call.
An iconic call, to say the least. But guys, we're here to talk trade deadline. We just had to get a little bit of that Rockets news out of the way. Some fun, exciting, feel-good news, with the All-Star weekend not far behind the NBA trade deadline. But as we get into some of the speculation here, let's talk first Eric Gordon. He's a guy that is right there on the trading block, and for all intents and purposes, it looks like EG might not be a Rocket for much longer. Some of the reporting that we've seen out of the organization, to me, a lot of it just looks like posturing. It wouldn't make sense, for me, and maybe you guys want to, check me on this, but I don't think it makes any sense for the Rockets to try and keep Eric Gordon past this deadline. He's played a phenomenal first half of the season. He would be an integral part for any team looking to make a significant playoff push this postseason. So what are some of the trades that you guys have been kind of mulling about in your head, trying to figure out, okay, where would we like to see Eric Gordon go? Give me your sexiest Eric Gordon trade proposal. Let's start with you, Dave. What do you got?
I think, it's funny. David and I last night texted back and forth about what are the most valuable picks that the Rockets could get. And we came up with like this long list. And then we basically just said, you know what, forget this. This is too hard to do because there's protections and all this. But I think what we came up with for sure was that the 2027 Lakers pick, if unprotected, would probably be the most valuable. So I don't know if that pick is obtainable for Eric Gordon, but I think in that scenario, I would be okay taking back Talen Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, and don't look at my tweet history about Talen Horton-Tucker as I say that, but I'm saying you take back that contract knowing it's going to, he's got that player option that could go to 2024 if you can get the 2027 unprotected pick. Obviously, I prefer a Russ Wall swap to do something like that. That's looking unlikely. But that would probably be, in my opinion, the best they could do for Eric Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm setting my sights a little more realistic, and as I like to joke with Dave.
Okay, the wet blanket coming in hot. Here we
wet
go.
Blanket here. I mean, I seriously doubt another team is going to give you an unprotected pick for Eric Gordon. If you can get it, I fully agree with Dave. Go for the unprotected pick in an out year, because that's the type of asset that has upside that a late first-round pick in this coming draft just doesn't have. But odds are the trade proposals that will be on the table come February 10th are probably going to be playoff contenders offering a 2022 first-round pick, probably lottery protected. If you can get top 10 protection, that would be great. But Cleveland is the most common one that I see. Rubio and Cleveland's first round pick for Gordon. You've seen Toronto, Boston, although I don't know if I buy Boston. But actually,
Minnesota as well.
Minnesota as well. Yeah, that could be a good one, because there's no guarantee they make the playoffs out of the play-in. So if they give you top 10 protection on that, you could be getting the 12th pick, which would be pretty nice. Actually, my favorite idea is actually one that Dave came up with, which is a slight variation of one that I've been looking at. It's playing Cleveland and Toronto, doing a 3-team deal with them where you can trade Gordon to one of them and then move Dragic to get an extra asset. So I think, Dave, yours was Gordon to Toronto, Dragic to Cleveland, Rubio, a first-round pick from Toronto, and a second-round pick from Cleveland to the Rockets.
Correct.
That is a somewhat realistic trade. If Toronto can't find something better with Dragic, that would be a way to get a first and a second out of that. I don't know if you're getting that Houston pick out of Cleveland, the Houston second rounder this year, but if it's the Spurs second rounder this year that Cleveland has, or even a future Cleveland second, that's a way to kind of maximize your draft assets coming back instead of just one first round pick.
Anything to squeeze a second round pick out of somebody, right, David?
You know me.
But at this point, guys, I think it's a pretty safe assessment to think if you come away with at least a first rounder for Eric Gordon, even if it is one like a 2022 first rounder from one of those playoff teams, so arguably a mid to late first rounder at that point, I think that's kind of fair value at this point for Eric Gordon, especially considering the fact that the Rockets probably were looking to move him last NBA trade deadline. And then it was almost a silver lining that EG wound up having the groin injury that he did that sidelined him, because now he's been able to play up his value considerably going into this deadline.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the way he's played this year on a team that, is rebuilding and not playing very well. I mean, just the percentages that he's been shooting, he stayed healthy. He's a good two-way player. The way Phoenix is playing, for example, is very similar to where the Rockets are playing. I think there are teams that would be very interested in him. And as you pointed out, Jackson, his trade value should be good enough for a first-round pick. I don't see why not. I would be surprised if Rafael Stone is basically getting nothing more than second-round pick offers.
And I do want to say, I put up a poll a few days ago and got more than 1,000 votes in it, asking, just hypothetically speaking, if the best offer you could get for Gordon, and I agree, I expect them to get a first-round pick for him. If the best offer you could get is Cleveland giving Houston back its second-round pick, would you do that, or would you just hold on to Eric Gordon? And for what it's worth, 70% of the voters said they just hold on to Gordon. It would be an interesting conundrum for Rafael Stone as to whether he would hold on to Gordon and take his chances for a first rounder in the offseason. Again, I'm pretty confident he can get a first, but who knows? There could be scenarios where it could make sense to hold on to him, but like you said, Jackson, he's a depreciating asset, so you like to maximize the value now while you can.
And if I could jump in there, Jackson, I apologize. I just want to say, to me, it would be just shocking. The NBA has changed so drastically in how they view first-round picks. I don't know if it's because of the buyout market, because somebody may get Eric Gordon right now, and then they say, well, we can get Goran Dragic after a buyout and get him for the league minimum. I don't know if that's what's changed. The organization's view of trading first-round picks for talent that can help them win right now. I look at the Lou Williams trade in 2017. The Rockets gladly gave up a first-round pick for that. I thought it had a very significant impact on the team. I think Eric Gordon can have a huge impact on a handful of teams, Cleveland being one of them, Phoenix. I think he would help the Lakers quite a bit, even though I think, as long as they've got Russ there's going to be issues. But I think he could add a lot to them and, Minnesota. So I don't want to say it's a failure on Rafael Stone's part, but I just feel like there's got to be some sort of salesmanship here. They've got to find a first-round pick for him. I would be surprised if they can't.
No, it makes perfect sense. And at this point, I've kind of just, I'm resigned to the idea it's going to happen. And it'll be a sad day too, when Eric Gordon is no longer a Houston Rocket. I think you have to argue, right? Somebody brought up the idea the other day that he might be a top 15 of all time Rocket, like maybe borderline top 15, top 20, like give or take. But nonetheless, it'll be a sad day when Eric Gordon is no longer a part of this franchise, because he has meant so much to this franchise over this last handful of years through the back end of the Harden era and all of that. But there is another name that we have to spend a little bit of time talking about, and that is going to be one Christian Wood, and whether or not he will find himself still remaining a part of the Houston Rockets after the NBA trade deadline. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at Prize Picks, because look, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, you got to check it out. It's so simple. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times back on any entry when you use Prize Picks. And all you have to do is use promo code NBA when you download the app or visit their website. Use promo code NBA. You get $50 for free if any player in your lineup scores just a single point. It's that simple. So go check out Prize Picks. Their daily fantasy made easy. You're going to love it. I know you're going to love it. Check them out. Prize Picks. Download the app from the App Store. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Another message from our friends over at TurboTax, because look, people think unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, right? But for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. We all have unique lives, whether you've invested in crypto or you're an up-and-coming small business owner. Luckily, TurboTax Live has experts who can answer your tax questions, walk you through the whole process, or even do your taxes for you start to finish. They help you get every deduction that you deserve, no matter your unique situation. And you can talk to a TurboTax Live expert through your phone or computer without ever leaving your house. So do your thing. TurboTax will let you do your thing. They've got your taxes. Intuit TurboTax Live. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, thank you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. One of the reasons we're here, the main reason we're here, the NBA trade deadline right around the corner, February 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And Locked On NBA is going to be hosting a live trade deadline show to break down all the blockbuster moves from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every big move that happens. And hey, if the Rockets make a move, you know I'm going to be there to break it down. So continuing on here with Dave Hardisty and David Weiner, Clutch fans at Beam a Thug. You can follow them on Twitter. Guys, let's talk a little Christian Wood. Because Christian Wood is kind of this, I think he's the biggest, maybe not conundrum for the Houston Rockets at this trade deadline, but there's been so much discourse about, is he a long-term fit for this team, right? Do they need to move on from him, sooner rather than later? What does this fit look like with Alperen Sengun? So, Dave, let's start with you first. Are you hell-bent on the idea that the Rockets have to move on from Christian Wood at this deadline? And what is your gut feeling telling you that this team is going to do with C. Wood moving forward?
I'm hell-bent on them moving Christian Wood, but I would say by the summer. I'd like it to be this deadline, but I also understand if certain things have hurt his trade value, that I don't think you have to just dump him. I just don't think he's part of the long-term future. I think he's an exceptional talent offensively. He's probably a league average 3-point shooter, but he's capable. He's going to stretch the floor, and he's got a lot of skills inside offensively. I think Alperen Sengun is at least the guy you hope you're grooming to be your future center. You just can't go with Wood and Sengun. They're both so poor defensively, and I think in Sengun's case you have hope for improvement. I don't see Wood as being the guy playing next to him. I don't see Wood, staying ahead of him. I think they need to trade him by this summer, but I'm not going to be extremely disappointed if they don't do it at this deadline.
Well, I guess I'm less hell-bent on trading Christian Wood. I generally share Dave's views on Wood as a player, and I don't necessarily think he's a key part of their future. But I think the Rockets are dealing from a position of strength vis-a-vis Christian Wood and the trade deadline. He's got another full year on a really team-friendly contract. It's a really great contract that he's on. They brought in Daniel Tice, and say what you will about him, I think having him on the bench gives you someone who can step in and fill up some of those minutes, obviously along with Sengun, if you trade Wood and don't bring back another center. And then you can also wait till the offseason, see if you win one of the top 3 spots in the lottery and you take Chet Holmgren or Paolo Banchero or Jabari Smith. that'll give you a much better idea of what your big positions are going to be next year. So, if they can get the right offer, I'm totally fine with them trading Wood now. But I don't think they need to trade him for 50 cents on the dollar.
What do you think is a right offer? Just in your idea of a market value for him?
Yeah, because I think that's the hard part, right? Is how do you evaluate Christian Wood, right? Is it a young prospect in a first, give or take? Is that asking too much, or is it 2 firsts? Like, what is the proper return for Christian Wood at this point?
Yeah. I mean, so I could tell you what the Rockets probably view as return is probably 2 first-round picks and a young player. Maybe something along the lines of what the Magic got for Aaron Gordon last year from Denver, which was, I believe, a future first and RJ Hampton, along with along Gary Harris's contract, which is coming off the books this summer. I'm sure they're looking, Jonathan Fagan had a terrific article a few days ago about the Rockets' philosophy, and I think they're looking at first-round picks in 2023 or later with higher upside, even if you're dealing with teams that are contenders now. The 2027 Lakers pick being a prime example of one of those picks if you get limited protection. So maybe one of those picks and a young player. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and there are some teams that I think could really use Christian Wood, and he would be the perfect fit for them and really elevate their offense. And maybe they'd be willing to give up a king's ransom for him. But, gun to my head, I don't see any of those offers come the Rockets' way in the next few days.
I think some of those teams, right? Like, one team that kept getting floated around earlier this season, and I couldn't quite see it. And then as the season progressed, I kept pushing back on this idea of Christian Wood to the Golden State Warriors. And now, having seen them and what they look like without Draymond Green, and even when Draymond is out there, I think that the Warriors find themselves and I hate we're having to talk about the Warriors on a Rockets podcast. This is awful. But, I think the Warriors find themselves in a position where they almost have to make some kind of a move to be able to catch up to the Phoenix Suns. And, if they don't, then they're going to be looked at as, their front office is going to be looked at as, light years ahead. If they don't, they already were crucified last year for not capitalizing on the draft assets that they had and not bolstering the roster around Steph Curry last season. So now this year, with a legitimate shot to make some noise in the playoffs, to have another title run, if they try to, run things at the margins and say, oh no, we're going to hold on to Wiseman, we're going to hold on to Kuminga and Moody, and we're also trying to build for the future while also trying to be a win now team. I think, unless they manage to pull it all together, then they're going to get some serious backlash for that. And I think that could be a team that could be a serious player for Christian Wood. I would be very receptive to a Wiseman and like a first, or like Wiseman and a Moody kind of trade package. And I think if you're the Warriors, you have to at least, listen to that phone call.
I think it's a great point. I think that you talk with Warrior fans, or I should say guys who are.
I try not to talk with Warriors fans as much as possible, but I get where you're going with it, Dave.
Well, once I said Warrior fans, I realized that there's a large population of Warrior fans you don't necessarily want to talk to, but there are some that are a little bit more sensible, and they just have that view that Golden State, their front office really is that arrogant, and they believe that their process works. I agree with you, Jackson. If they come up short on the title this year, they're going to be criticized heavily for not giving Steph Curry, Klay Thompson the best shot that they can. I think Wiseman for Wood, just those two, is tempting because Wiseman's 20, but I don't like James Wiseman. I don't think that James Wiseman comes back to them and can help them significantly in the playoffs. I think he hurts them too much when he's on the floor at this age and his inexperience. But I'm with you, Wiseman and Moody. That's a trade I would be very interested in. And you bring up a good point as well. They do have their first round pick, which is 29, 28, whatever it is right now. So you would think, yes, that makes a lot of sense. I just don't have any faith that Golden State's front office, they're going for the jackpot. I think they want to win the title and still look like geniuses for keeping this light years process going.
David, I want to cycle to you here because we need a steady dose of realism when it comes to Christian Wood. So I appreciate and I applaud you for being the voice of reason on this podcast to balance Dave and myself out. But is there a trade in your mind that you are kind of enticed by that you think is a realistic trade on both ends? Not necessarily this Warriors one, but just one that you've been kind of stewing on.
I mean, the one that I keep coming back to is Charlotte. If you can get PJ Washington, Plumlee's expiring deal, or he's got a partial guarantee next year, and then a future first round pick. It's going to have to be one in the out years, and that's one of those picks. What the protections on that pick would determine how viable that trade is for the Rockets. But, PJ Washington would probably be a nice fit here as a power forward. And then if that pick has limited protections, that's a nice future asset. So that would be something. I don't know if Charlotte would be that interested in a very low protection pick plus PJ Washington, but I think Wood would fit terrifically in Charlotte.
Yeah, I echo that, by the way. I think he'd be a great fit. Probably the best fit would be Christian Wood going to Charlotte. I would throw Sacramento out there as well, simply because we don't know what kind of pressure that owner is placing on former Rockets executive Monty McNair, who's the GM with Sacramento. What is that team going to do? Because that team right now is completely tanking. They're falling to the ground. They actually are going to be threatening, I think, the Rockets before too long to finish that.
But Dave, that's the problem. They're not tanking. They're trying to win, and they're just bad.
Very good point. Organically tanking. So I think that's a team you have to at least look at. But, the whole point for the Rockets would be to get that first round pick or a first round pick in the future from them. I don't know. Right now, they seem to be big game hunting, even though they've pulled out of the Ben Simmons pursuit. I don't know if they would go for Wood, but that's something you have to try to explore as well.
Let me float one y'all's way here. And this is one that I look at and I try my best when whenever I'm messing around with the trade machine to try and put myself in the shoes of the other team, right? And be like, okay, does this really make sense from the other, organization standpoint? And the other team that I come back to a lot is Toronto for Christian Wood. Surprisingly, I know that's been a destination floated for, a possible EG destination because of the Goran Dragic contract and the similarities there. But I look at the structure of that Toronto team, and I think that any team that you want to send Christian Wood to where he could be the most successful is a team that can kind of hide or mask some of his defensive deficiencies. And Toronto has all the defenders to be able to do that. And he kind of fits into what they want to do, their philosophy offensively. And so I come away thinking, some kind of a package with maybe if you use Dragic as like the salary matching portion, Precious Achiuwa, and then a future first coming back for Christian Wood, I wouldn't be too upset at a deal like that.
David, I'll let you jump in there.
Generally, that structure probably is interesting, but Achiuwa has been terrible this year. He's rebounding well, but I think, and I haven't checked the stats recently, I think he is a center with a true shooting percentage in the 40s. It's pretty brutal. So some of the luster is off of him as a prospect. They have a lot of good players, but I don't think Masai Ujiri's given up any of their top players. But if he's willing to give up future picks, I'd probably rather have 2 firsts from Toronto than any of their young guys. Maybe give them some salary relief if it's Wood, and we'll throw in a small salary for Dragic and a couple picks. But again, that's Ujiri is arguably the best GM in the league. I don't know if he's going to be doing us any favors.
Yeah, it's good to see David throwing the unrealistic trade scenario out there this time with 2 firsts.
Asked for. I'm not saying whether.
Okay, that's fine. No, I just
not only that he chimes in and he goes, Masai Ujiri is probably the best GM in the league, and as we speak, Rafael Stone is pulling out his Twitter and he's unfollowing David.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm motivating.
Jackson makes a good point about masking, Christian Wood. I think, Golden State could probably do something like that as well. I mean, there are definitely defensive flaws. I think Daniel Tice makes a lot of sense for them instead of Wood. I think it's a great Eric Gordon destination. They have real depth issues right now. I think with that triple OT game, they had their 5 starters play 50 plus minutes, all 3 of them, or excuse me, all 5 of them. So, they need help.
Yeah, that was really tough. It was 3 guys.
Yeah, 3, and they pulled it out. That's a team that needs to add somebody at the deadline. And by the report that came out yesterday, they are going to trade Goran Dragic for something. Money's not an issue with them. And if you know anything about Toronto's ownership, they print money basically. And they're, under the tax, or, they have a good gap to go before they hit that tax level. So, to me, Eric Gordon wouldn't be a problem to add to them. I think I've been gauging a lot of fans because I think the respectable fans of other teams will give you an honest take on whether that makes sense. And I think a lot of, or some Toronto fans want Eric Gordon. Others just don't feel he fits their timeline. They feel that they're a younger team. But in my opinion, that team could make noise this year. I mean, they're starting to come around right now. They've got really good, lengthy defenders. I wouldn't want to face them in the first round if I was one of the top 3 seeds. So, I think they could make some noise. Adding a guy like Eric Gordon to me makes the most sense for Toronto. And Tice.
I've got the receipts that say that I was incredibly high on Toronto coming into the season. And even though they started a bit suboptimally with the injuries due to, OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam being out, I was like, no, go back and look. Like, I believed in this Toronto Raptors team, and I earned a lot of favor with Raptors fans. So with that, though, we've got a gigantic blockbuster of a deal that was presented to us on Twitter that we want to get to in just a moment, as well as answering your questions. So if you've got questions, trade proposals, anything you want us to discuss, hold on to those. We're going to get to those in the chat in just one moment after a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar. Because look, it's the new year. So that means New Year's resolutions, right? If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your New Year's plan. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Honestly, maybe even better than a candy bar, right? Built Bar makes it easy to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good. You're actually going to want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be gritty or chalky, or the consistency is just a little bit off. And the flavors, we got so many great flavors to choose from. Strawberry, cookies and cream, mint brownie, peanut butter, my personal favorite, coconut brownie chunk. You can't go wrong with a single flavor on their menu. And you can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Final segment here at Locked On Rockets, where we thank you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. Hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Free and available on all platforms. Wherever you listen to this podcast, you can listen to Locked On Bets. Rounding third, headed for home. Guys, we've got this gigantic blockbuster deal to go over here. And I want to make sure I have all the producer side stuff ready. All right, here we go. Hopefully I don't break anything on the live stream. All right, there it is. We've got this huge deal involving the Houston Rockets, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Sacramento Kings that was lobbed to us by way of Twitter. And I've got to say, looking at the framework of this deal, I'm very interested in it from all standpoints. So let me just run down the list here really quick. The Houston Rockets would be taking back in Russell Westbrook, DeAndre Jordan, the very juicy 2027 first-round pick from the LA Lakers, and a 2022 first-round pick, top 5 protected from the Sacramento Kings. The Lakers walk away with John Wall and Armani Brooks from the Rockets, and then Buddy Hield from the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings come away with Christian Wood, Talen Horton-Tucker, and I believe that's Wayne Ellington, right? Yeah, Wayne Ellington. There we go. So, guys, let's start with you, David. Give me your takeaways from this deal, because I come away thinking this deal makes a lot of sense for all 3 parties involved. Maybe a little question mark surrounding that Sacramento Kings pick that they're giving up, but ultimately, I think this is one of those few 3-team trades where everybody's walking away a winner here.
Well, I mean, I think from the Lakers standpoint, there'd be a couple of things, assumptions you have to make. Number one, that they really are willing to officially put egg on their face for the Russell Westbrook trade. And, from what other people have heard that I've read, the Lakers front office is very hesitant to admit they were wrong. And obviously a trade like this would be an admission. And then also, you look up there in the top, and that's the Lakers taking on an extra $10 million of salary, which is going to be several times over that much in luxury tax. So Jeannie Buss will have to crack open her checkbook big time with a trade like this. Assuming those two things assuming Jeannie Buss is okay with that and they're willing to take the egg on their face, I think this would be a nice move for them. I think Wall and Hield both help them a lot more than Russell Westbrook. The key would be on Sacramento's side. I think this would require in the Sacramento Kings war room, Vivek Ranadive pointing to everyone going, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Taylor Horton-Tucker, and then everyone caving and say, oh, yeah, we all love him. But if the Kings like THT enough where he's got positive value, then maybe they're willing to delude themselves into thinking they can crack the play-in this year and give up that minimally protected pick. But, Monty McNair got the job for a reason, former Rockets assistant GM. He's a smart guy, and unless the pressure is just insurmountable for him from ownership, I'm not 100% sure he's going to give up a minimally protected pick. But it's a really nice trade idea.
Yeah, I think the account that put this together did a good job of trying to balance it out. I do think the Kings are the one. I mean, David made a great point about the tax, but I think the Kings are the one that may be getting a little bit shorted here. We know they're not interested in Taylor Horton-Tucker. We know all 30 teams, even the Lakers, aren't interested in him. But I don't think they view that as an asset. So basically, they'd be doing this for Christian Wood. I kind of looked at it without noticing what David pointed out, which he's great at doing. The cap numbers, and that is a great point about the Lakers taking on that much money.
Whoa, don't inflate David's ego too much here. Okay, I already got him the bowl of brown M&Ms for per his rider contract clause, all that. We can't feed too much into that.
For sure. And I think if it might make more sense if something from Houston went back to Sacramento in that deal. I think maybe the 2022 Brooklyn pick is a little too much, but that's what I was initially thinking. That might get them to do that. I think it make it a top 4 protected pick. So they get, Sacramento gets to keep it and it can, carries over to next year if they do win the lottery. But they're going in trying to win this year. I think it's a trade that only makes sense for Sacramento if their owner really is saying to Monty McNair, we have got to make the playoffs this year. I'm tired of it being 13 years. We haven't made it. There's 10 teams now that at least play beyond the regular season. We've got to get in there. I don't know if that kind of pressure is being applied, but I do know that kind of pressure can be applied from an owner to a GM. We saw here, I know Daryl and the Rockets front office wanted to rebuild for a few years, but they were sort of under that, I don't want to say mandate, but under that pressure to compete, even if they weren't, adding those big name stars. So,
I thought you were referring to a certain 2019 trade.
Oh, yeah, let's not go there. I will say, though, that 2019 trade for Westbrook is a good parallel to what the Lakers are in right now. If I don't mean to change subject, but if LeBron James is applying that kind of pressure, like, look, I don't care about 2027. I came to you guys and I'm going to leave otherwise. The Lakers could be under that kind of strain. We don't know that for sure. But if LeBron wants Russell Westbrook gone, and we don't know that, then he's going to be gone and they're going to have to pay the price to do it.
I wonder if you're looking at this through the Kings lens, if removing that pick, if it still makes this trade valuable enough, both on the Rockets end and makes it slightly more palpable if you're the Kings, simply because I look at that 2027 Lakers first round draft pick and I almost feel right. Not all first round picks are created equal. And, you're looking at, if you're talking about a 2022, that's right around the corner from a team that's pushing for the playoffs, and it's going to conceivably fall somewhere 20 to 30 in this year's first round draft. That's kind of a whatever pick, but that 2027 Lakers pick is so far out. You don't know what the Lakers are going to look like down then. And I think the biggest key when it comes to evaluating, or, as far as these, draft capital is concerned in these trades and these hypotheticals, is the more time that you have away from when a pick actually conveys, the more time you have to actually work something with it, right? Whether that's, rolling it into another trade or just letting the time bide until that team is bad enough that suddenly that pick becomes way juicier than it looked when you first acquired it, right?
That makes sense to me. I think that's, they want to add future picks. They want to add, to my opinion, they want to add picks that they can trade in the future. And by future, I mean, 18 months out, that they can trade at the time when they need to go in and then you may become a playoff team. And it's not about, the Rockets using the 2027 pick with the Lakers. It's about getting something that has tremendous value in any kind of a trade. And not to get onto this trade exactly, but I think if Eric Gordon went to the Lakers in this trade, and again, you'd have to crunch the numbers. I think that makes more sense than Buddy Hield, just given contracts, given experience and what he could do for that team. But you'd have to crunch. I'm sure that would be a little bit more difficult to make work by the numbers.
Oh, no. You can make it work. The salary matching rules, the percentage difference when you're dealing with John Wall and Russell Westbrook's salaries, the room the leeway you have is tremendous in a deal that big.
And I will say that trade for the Lakers, it gets rid of all the guys that the Laker fans want to get rid of. They are desperate to unload DeAndre Jordan, and it's not a significant contract, but to them, they want to move him. They want to get rid of these players so they can then sign other guys that are available for their run, be available for the buyout market. And it doesn't, it's a tax hit, as David will point out, that if they just drop DeAndre Jordan and add somebody else, it's significant.
I think that trade was maybe, covertly created by a Lakers fan who was, operating a burner on Rockets Twitter. No, I kid, and I think one of you guys actually may have suggested this, a direct 1-for-1 trade with the Lakers that did involve Eric Gordon being packaged, in a John Wall deal going to LA. Was that one of you guys, or was that somebody else floating around Rockets Twitter?
I know I had proposed a John Wall and Eric Gordon for Westbrook, the THT Nunn poo-poo platter, their 2027 pick, and a couple second-round picks naturally. So I don't know if that's the one you're referring to.
I think it is. Yeah, and I think it is. And I come away thinking, right, the conventional logic here would say, oh, well, if you can move Christian Wood and get a separate deal, a first and maybe a young prospect, and if you can also move Eric Gordon and get a first or, something of that return. But again, if you can package those guys together, or I should say, if you could package Eric Gordon with John Wall, rather than thinking, oh, well, we're going to go get, a first, and Eric Gordon's worth a first by himself to some other, team that's out there, not named the Lakers. But if you can make the Lakers, be a little bit more enticed to trade that 2027 first by taking back the unfortunate Taylor Horton Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, poo-poo platters you alluded to, I'd jump on that trade in a heartbeat, even though Taylor Horton Tucker should be, I think, at this point viewed as a negative asset. Again, that 2027 first is just that's what year was it that LeBron had he was on the Cavs and he had the net, and the Cavs had the Nets pick, and it was being included in like every single trade that trade deadline, like leading up to the deadline. And it's like, it was the Nets pick. It's just every single trade hypothetical had the Nets pick, the Nets pick, the Nets pick. I feel like that's exactly what's happening this year, but with that 2027 Lakers first.
It's their only avenue to improve. In my opinion, they thought Taylor Horton Tucker was going to be a positive asset based on, I think that the impression that Laker fans got was that he had a lot of value because they refused to include him in the Kyle Lowry trade deal last year. And it obviously just blew up in their face. It's not that he doesn't have that kind of value, but it's also because they gave him a contract that makes him not valuable. There's no upside for the Rockets to trade for that contract. He's already paid like a number one pick of the draft, and he's got a player option that goes beyond 2023. It's just not attractive. There's no real upside by developing him. So in my opinion, David makes a great proposal in that deal. I just don't know if 2 seconds is enough. I kind of looked at it as a first round swap.
That's the thinking, is that, so you have, the Rockets, I'm sure, are asking in a Wall for Russ swap the 2027 pick. The Lakers don't want to do that. They might offer a couple of seconds. The Rockets don't want to do that. For a Gordon trade, the Rockets don't really want Taylor Horton Tucker. They'd want the 2027 pick. The Lakers won't give it up. That's not enough for them. They're not going to give that up for Eric Gordon. So you try to meet at the middle. If you're getting Wall and Gordon, is that enough to then get a 2027 pick and 2 seconds? But it's not enough to get, probably not enough to get a 2028 swap right. That would be nice if you could get it, but probably
you're right.
I meet somewhere in the middle.
There's a value gap there somewhere. I often thought, well, in a compromise, two realtors can't work a deal because two parties are apart. They kind of meet somewhere in the middle. I could see them, I wonder, to be honest, if clutch agency would somehow work with this, because they do want John Wall to go to the Lakers. Could Taylor Horton Tucker, as part of the deal, decline his player option? I don't even know if he can do that this early in the game, but decline that player option and say, hey, I'm going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2 years. And then, I can, the Rockets didn't just view it as salary. There's no downside if he opts into that deal. Again, that's probably unlikely, but with so much money on the table and so much at stake for John Wall, maybe they make it up to him somehow.
And then I know he hasn't really played all year, and I hope he is healthy going forward, but I quietly think Kendrick Nunn's a pretty decent player. So, I think he's got some positive value. I don't think he's got the value that Lakers fans think he has, but, he's a good player.
And he's expiring, right?
He's got a player option next year, but it's at a pretty reasonable rate. I think he took the taxpayer mid-level at a time when a lot of people thought he was going to get at least the non-taxpayer mid-level. So he may opt out, but with all the injuries, good chance he opts in. And okay, so you're paying him $5 million next year. So what?
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of time on the big name guys going into this deadline with obviously EG, Christian Wood, and now a little bit of John Wall propaganda as well, guys. But there are a handful of vets on this roster that could potentially see them be on the move at the trade deadline in Daniel Tice, David Nwaba, and DJ Augustine. Of those three names, and we'll go to you first, Dave, who do you think is the most likely that the Rockets might be, inclined to move this deadline, or that might have a suitor out there?
I would say DJ Augustine, just for because the contract is the most, I think, viable to trade. David's the one who's been basically come up with some great scenarios for that. And again,
I'm trying to get rid of him all season.
Yeah, he has, but I think Daniel Tice. It just depends on what happens with Christian Wood, or what else you get back, because I don't think you can. If you trade Wood, I don't think you can trade Tice right now. I think you might have to look at that in the summer, because I don't think Şengün's going to be giving you huge minutes. Garuba's, got his injury right now. Just not in a good spot center-wise to trade both of those guys. So I would say DJ Augustine makes the most sense because he is expiring. Nwaba's got another year left after this. And Tice is, there may be interest in him, but he does have, this is the first of a 3-year deal with a fourth-year team option.
Yeah, I agree. DJ Augustine for sure. He's technically not expiring. He's got a very, very small partial guarantee next year. And if a team just really, really likes him, they can always just not waive him, and they have him for $7.3 million next year. But odds are he'd get waived. But most of the trades I've been throwing out there for Augustine involve taking on additional salary from a team that's near or over the tax, and maybe getting a second-round pick or some other future asset out of another team. The one I most often go to is DJ to the Clippers for Serge Ibaka, who makes $9.7 million and a second-round pick. And the reason that makes so much sense for both teams, well, DJ's out of the rotation. Josh Christopher's taking his spot. The Clippers would save like $14 million in salary and tax. They have a DJ Augustine-sized trade exception from the Rajon Rondo trade that they could absorb him into. And when they trade out Ibaka, they get a new $9.7 million trade exception. And when you're hopelessly over the cap like the Clippers, that would be a really nice asset that they would have for the next 12 months. Between the savings and the trade exception, I think that's well worth the second-round pick if I'm the Clippers. And why not do it for the Rockets? It's only going to cost them on their side of the ledger like $1.5 million. And that's what a pick in the 50s is going for at a minimum in the draft. So
do the Rockets have a trade exception to do that? Because they're trading Augustine.
They don't need to, because they're trading DJ Augustine. So DJ Augustine for Ibaka works on the Rockets side of the ledger. And then the Clippers can characterize the trade however they want. And for their standpoint, it would be trade 1, Augustine into their Rondo trade exception. Trade 2, Ibaka for nothing, generating a new trade exception for them.
Okay, but I'm saying, how can the Rockets take him for nothing?
No, well, each team in a trade is able to structure the same trade in the manner most beneficial to that team.
I see.
From the Rockets standpoint, it's just Augustine for Ibaka.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. I didn't know you could do that.
I love that trade permutation. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Rockets. The only thing that doesn't make sense is how are they going to do that trade with DJ Augustine and Serge Ibaka, and then because then suddenly you can't trade John Wall to the Clippers as your plan B if the Lakers don't actually want him. So no, I kid. Guys, it's been great having you here on the show. Do me a favor, let everybody know where they can track you down at. Dave, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to David.
Sure. On Twitter, social media is at Clutch Fans, and the website's clutchfans.net. And that's where we are, talking on the forums and talking Rockets all day.
Yeah, you can find me at Beam a Thug, like it says here, and I'm speaking for the audio listeners. I'm on Twitter all the time, probably more than I should be, and then I occasionally drop into the boards on Clutch Fans, and every once in a while, Dave and I put a podcast out there.
Yeah, twice a year.
Twice a year, right? Around maybe around the deadline and around the draft, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to get the dynamic duo here on the podcast. It's been a ton of fun. Thank you guys so much for making the time.
Thanks, Jackson.
My pleasure.
That's going to do it for our episode. Hope you enjoyed our trade breakdowns, our kind of speculation and analysis headed into the NBA trade deadline for your Houston Rockets. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, brand new Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. A lot of you are watching via YouTube right now, but if you haven't done so yet, search Locked on Rockets on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.
Thank you.